I want to take you back to a very specific, a very cold morning in the winter of 2011. Picture the Twin Rivers School District out in Central California.
Right, it's a pretty bleak scene. The financial crisis has just absolutely gutted the local economy there.
Yeah.
The state government is in a total meltdown. And this district, I mean, they are cutting everything. Art, music, sports, all gone. You're cutting right down to the bone.
It gets so bad that they actually start cutting the utilities. There's this photo taken by a student that winter. It's just a picture of the thermostat on the classroom wall, and it reads 44 degrees Fahrenheit.
Which is literally refrigerator temperature.
Exactly.
You can see your breath in the air while you're, trying to learn algebra.
So you have these shivering kids, desperate administrators, a district on the verge of total collapse. And into this frozen landscape walks a company. They have this very professional, benevolent-sounding name, Education Funding Partners.
And they come bearing a gift, right? They tell the school board, hey, we have a solution. We could bring you $500,000 a year in private money just to turn the heat back on.
And the best part, at least to the board, is that it won't cost the district a single tax dollar. It is a completely free service.
Free, which is probably the most dangerous word in the English language.
Oh, absolutely.
Because as we know, there is no such thing.
Yeah.
The company explained that this funding would come entirely from corporate contributions. It sounded like charity. It sounded like a rescue mission, really.
But it wasn't charity, it was a trade. The board just had to realize one thing. They were sitting on a gold mine. They had an asset that was way more valuable than their buildings, more valuable than the land the school sat on.
The students.
The students. Education Funding Partners pointed out that because of compulsory education laws, these kids were a captive audience. They literally could not leave.
Right.
And if you were already seizing their attention to teach them history or math, why not slice off a little piece of that attention and sell it to Coca-Cola or McDonald's?
The pitch deck to the advertisers for this was chillingly direct. I mean, they didn't talk about helping kids or saving schools. They promised authentic access to impressionable minds.
Yeah.
They used all the industry lingo. This was a chance to build brand awareness that would last a lifetime. They were offering the chance to mold the consumers of the future while they were physically trapped at their desks.
And here is the kicker, the part that really sets the stage for what we are doing on this deep dive today. The school board didn't fight it.
No.
There was no great moral outcry. They just signed the deal. A spokeswoman actually said, we need to be innovative about the assets we have.
That right there is the signal. That is the moment where the crisis in perception really reveals itself. To the board, it seemed perfectly logical. It seemed like a win-win.
Right, heat for ads.
Exactly. But what it actually represented was the total normalization of selling human attention in a sanctuary that was previously strictly off limits. They didn't see children anymore. They saw inventory.
Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world. Today, we are exploring this very concept by looking at the invisible architecture that structures our reality. And to do that, we are diving deep into the book, The Attention Merchants, The Epic Scramble to Get Inside Our Heads by Tim Wu.
And we should be very clear right up front. This is not a book review.
No, not at all.
We aren't just going to tell you it's a good read, though, it is. The book is just our entry point. The territory we are actually exploring is the system itself, the attention market.
This is the massive industrial complex that converts human focus into revenue. It is the interlocking web of media, advertising, measurement, and platform systems. It's the air we breathe now, but we rarely stop to actually look at the machinery pumping it.
We need to unpack what Tim Wu calls the grand bargain. It's the deal we have all implicitly made. We accept the extraction of our attention, our time, our focus, our mental energy in exchange for quote-unquote free content and convenience.
We're going to trace the entire arc of this industry. We'll look at the design, how the machinery of capture was first built, then the incentives, the actual science of engineering demand, then the outcomes, the creation of sensationalism, and the colonization of our living rooms.
Then we'll cover persistence, why we physically cannot look away from our screens. And finally, interconnection, how we have actually become the merchants ourselves today.
It is a wild journey from the penny press of the 1830s all the way to this smartphone sitting in your pocket right now. So let's just start at the beginning. Phase 1, design, the blueprint of capture.
Yeah, let's do it.
We tend to think of clickbait or ad-supported content as these purely modern digital annoyances. Like they were cooked up by a tech startup in 2012, but the system goes back way further. We're going to New York City, 1833.
To understand the massive disruption here, you have to understand the pre-existing system. In 1830, if you wanted to read a newspaper, it cost 6 cents.
Which doesn't sound like a lot, but adjusting for inflation.
It's like a surprisingly expensive lunch. It was absolutely a luxury item. And these papers were huge, dry, blanket-sized sheets filled with political speeches and shipping manifests.
Right.
They were for the elite. Businessmen, politicians, they relied heavily on paid subscriptions. If you were a regular working-class person, you didn't read the news. You couldn't afford it. And frankly, it wasn't written for you.
Enter Benjamin Day. He's 23 years old. He's a print shop guy. Not a journalist, not an intellectual. He's got bills to pay, and he has this crazy idea for a paper called the New York Sun.
Day's idea was disruption in its purest, most aggressive form. He decided to sell his paper for a single penny.
A penny, which was actually less than the cost of the paper and the ink required to print it.
Exactly.
He is literally losing money on every single copy he hands out on the street. If he sells 1 million copies, he goes bankrupt.
On the surface, it looks like financial suicide. But Day had realized something fundamental, something that would permanently change the trajectory of human history. He realized that his readers were not his customers.
This is the wait a minute moment. If I buy a paper from a kid on the street, I'm the customer, right? I just gave him a penny.
In Day's model, the penny is just a token. It's virtually free. In his model, the reader is the product. He was aggregating eyes mass human attention by offering free or incredibly cheap content and then selling those eyes to advertisers.
The advertisers were the real customers.
Exactly. They were the ones paying the bills.
That is the birth of the attention merchant model. It's the exact same model as Facebook, the same model as Google, the same model as network TV. Get the audience for cheap using bait, sell them to industry for a massive profit.
And it worked. The Sun became an unbelievable success. It proved that you didn't need a political party or a rich patron to fund a newspaper. You just needed a massive crowd. And to get that crowd, Day had to change the content.
Right, because working people didn't care about shipping manifests.
He realized the masses wanted something else entirely.
They wanted drama. They wanted a spectacle.
Exactly. No more dry congressional debates. He gave them police reports. He gave them local scandals. He gave them human interest stories. He basically invented the news as we know it today. Stories about regular people doing crazy or terrible things.
He even ran a story about discovering life on the moon, the Great Moon Hoax. I love this story.
Oh, it's a classic.
Yeah.
He ran a series of totally fabricated articles claiming that a famous British astronomer had built a super telescope in South Africa and seen Batmen and unicorns living on the moon.
Batman.
Batman. Vespertilio homo. And the city of New York went absolutely insane. People were practically fighting in the streets to get a copy of the patient to read about the moon bats. Circulation skyrocketed. And here's the crucial systemic thing. Even when people eventually found out it was fake, they didn't really care.
Because they had been entertained.
Right. It captured their attention. And that's the key currency. But Day was still working purely with text. The next major leap in the system's design happens when we figure out how to hack the visual cortex. For that, we have to go to Paris in the late 1800s.
The visual revolution. Because before this, cities were honestly pretty drab. Advertising was mostly small, text-based notices pinned to wooden boards, lost dog or room for rent. But in Paris, thanks to new color lithography technology, we see the rise of the poster.
And we are not talking about little flyers. We're talking about 7-foot-tall explosions of vivid color pasted onto the sides of buildings.
You really have to imagine walking down a gray, soot-covered cobblestone street in 1890s Paris. Everything is brown or gray or black, and suddenly, boom, there's a massive, life-sized image of a woman in bright yellow silk, laughing, throwing flowers. It must have looked like a portal to another dimension.
It was a total assault on the senses. Wu describes these posters by artists like Jules Chéret as luminous, brilliant, even blinding. And they featured something that always works in marketing: slightly scandalous, half-dressed women.
The charrettes, they called them.
Yes, and this is where the science of attention begins to deliberately tap into what we call the reptilian core. The poster artists discovered they could bypass logic and hack the brain's automatic attention.
We should distinguish that for a second. What exactly is the difference between automatic attention and regular attention?
So controlled attention is volitional. It's when you consciously decide to read a book or sit down to solve a crossword puzzle. You are the pilot of your brain. Automatic attention is reflexive. It's when a tiger jumps out of the bushes or a bright red bird flies across your peripheral vision.
You literally have to look.
You have to. It's a deep-seated survival mechanism.
So the advertisers learn to hijack the survival mechanism.
Exactly. They use high contrast, bright primary colors, and the illusion of motion-like flipbook effects to trigger that exact reflex. And significantly, they started targeting the in-between moments,
The in-between moments, what do you mean?
the interstices of daily life, waiting for a streetcar,
Uh-huh.
walking down the boulevard to get a coffee. Those moments where your mind is just idling, where you aren't focused on a specific task. The attention merchant realized that this idle time was fallow ground just waiting to be harvested.
But there's a built-in problem with this, right? The disenchantment effect.
Yes, and this is a recurring dynamic in the system. It explains why ads and media are so incredibly loud and fast today. The first time you see a 7-foot poster of a dancer, you stop dead in your tracks. You are enchanted. But the 100th time you walk past it,
You don't even see it, it becomes wallpaper.
the novelty wears off. The brain adapts to the stimulus.
So the merchant has to shout louder. To maintain the exact same level of capture, the stimuli must become more extreme. It's an arms race of escalation.
Which leads us perfectly into the next major leap in design radio. Because this is where the model stops being something you just pass on the public street and becomes something you actively invite inside your own home.
And this gives us one of the great foundational business battles of the 20th century, CBS versus NBC.
Right. So set the stage for us. NBC is the absolute titan at this point, right? Led by David Sarnoff.
Yeah, NBC was the empire. They had the best technology, the massive reach, all the money. Sarnoff viewed radio as this high-culture educational medium. He wanted to bring opera and classical music and lectures to the unwashed masses. And his business model was very straightforward retail. He charged the local affiliate stations, the guys running the radio towers in Ohio or Kansas. He charged them money to air NBC programs.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Here's a high-quality show. Pay us to air it.
But then comes CBS. It's a tiny, struggling upstart network owned by a young guy named Sam Paley. And Paley wasn't a tech visionary. He was originally a cigar salesman.
The salesman.
Right. And because he was a salesman, he understood the grand bargain way better than Sarnoff ever could.
What did he do?
He completely flipped the model. He went to those local station managers and said, I will give you the entire CBS schedule of premium programs for absolutely free.
Free content again, just like Benjamin Day in the penny press.
But there was a condition. Paley said, I give you the shows for free, but you must air the sponsored content, the ads uncut. You can't skip them. And not only is the programming free, but we will actually pay you a portion of the national ad revenue.
That is just evil genius. If I'm a local station manager, I can pay NBC for a show, or I can get paid by CBS to take a show. It's a complete no-brainer.
It was a huge win for them, but it was a systemic lock-in for the attention market. In 3 months, CBS signed 25 affiliates. But more importantly, this nationalized the content. Suddenly, everyone across the entire country is listening to the exact same free entertainment, which is really just the bait for the advertising hook.
And it solidified the idea that programming, the comedies, the dramas, the music, are merely, as Wu calls them, scheduled interruptions of marketing bulletins.
That's the design. The machinery is built. You aggregate the audience with free bait, you sell them to the highest bidder, and you constantly escalate the stimulus to keep them looking.
So the machine is built, but now we need to look at what fuels it. Let's move to phase 2, incentives. Because it's not enough to just show people ads. You have to make them deeply want things they didn't even know they needed. This is the engineering of demand.
This takes us into the 1920s and the rise of scientific advertising. Because before this, advertising was seen as kind of a lowbrow huckster's game, snake oil salesman banging a drum. But a man named Claude Hopkins came along and said, no, this is a science. There are fixed psychological principles.
Hopkins is such a fascinating character. He wrote a manifesto literally titled Scientific Advertising, and his big, lasting contribution was demand engineering.
It's the dark art of creating a problem just so you can sell the solution.
My favorite example from the book, and honestly the most ridiculous one that still affects us today, is orange juice.
Let's get into the orange juice. It's a perfect case study because in the early 20th century, nobody drank orange juice. It just wasn't a thing people did. Oranges were a fruit you peeled and ate on a holiday. But the citrus growers in California had a massive, massive surplus. They were growing way more oranges than people could possibly eat before they rotted.
Right, because you can only eat 1 orange at a sitting, maybe 2, but you can drink 3 or 4 oranges in a single small glass of juice.
Exactly. It's a consumption multiplier. But there was absolutely no demand. People didn't think of oranges as a beverage. So Hopkins creates this massive campaign. He brings in a guy named Dr. Wiley, a completely authoritative medical-looking figure who suddenly claims that orange juice is a biological necessity, an elixir for infants.
Wait, he literally told mothers that their babies needed orange juice to survive.
The ad copy read, "Orange juice is regularly prescribed for the diet of tiny babies." It wasn't about the taste, it wasn't about refreshment, it was about fear and maternal duty. If you are a good mother, you buy this fruit, you squeeze it, and you give it to your child. That is demand engineering.
You take a surplus agricultural product,
Right.
you invent a fake medical necessity,
Yeah.
and you guilt-trip the entire population into buying it.
And it completely worked. Orange juice became a staple of the American breakfast solely because of an ad campaign designed to clear rotting inventory.
And this dovetails perfectly with the work of John B. Watson. This guy, he was a legitimate, highly respected academic psychologist.
He was a giant in the field. He was the father of behaviorism. He was at Johns Hopkins. And then he was fired for a massive personal scandal. And he jumped ship to the J. Walter Thompson advertising agency.
Watson is incredibly pivotal because he brought the sterile clinical lab directly into the ad agency. He treated human beings like lab rats.
He essentially said, I don't need to inform the consumer about the merits of the product. I don't need to appeal to their reason. He believed that consciousness, what you actually think you're thinking, is totally irrelevant. All that matters is stimulus and response.
So instead of an ad saying, this car gets good mileage and has a strong engine, what does he do?
He taps into the primal triggers: fear, love, and pride. He moved the entire industry from offering information to exerting emotional control.
He had that incredible quote about the Garden of Eden.
Oh, yes. He said, it is only necessary to confront him with either fundamental or conditioned emotional stimuli. And then he basically said, since the serpent in the Garden of Eden influenced Eve, the world has tried to find out ways of controlling human behavior. He literally saw himself as the professionalization of the serpent.
That is terrifyingly honest. He's admitting, I am the snake.
It shifted the industry permanently. Advertising became, if you don't buy the specific car, you are a failure as a provider, or if you don't use this brand of soap, nobody will ever love you.
But there's another incentive at play here in the system, and it's one we see on our social media feeds every single day. We talked about Benjamin Day and the penny press earlier, but we didn't talk about his rival, the race to the bottom.
Ah, yes. The newspaper wars between Benjamin Day's son and James Gordon Bennett's Herald.
Bennett was, well, quite the character.
Cross-eyed, incredibly brash, a self-described flagrant charlatan. He looked at Day's massive success with crime stories and said, I can go lower. Bennett realized that while Day was successful, he could capture even more attention by focusing on the deeply lurid, the freakish, and the debauched.
He built the Frankenstein of news.
Exactly. There was this famous murder trial in 1836. A prostitute named Helen Jewett was brutally killed. Bennett covered it with such a graphic, gory, obsessive detail that it completely scandalized the polite society of New York. He described the burned body, the blood on the sheets, the layout of the room.
And the result of all that outrage.
People absolutely loved it. The Herald caught up to the Sun in circulation almost overnight. And this reveals a highly stable equilibrium in the attention market. In a highly competitive environment, attention always gravitates toward the garish and the outrageous.
So sensationalism isn't a bug in the system. It's not just bad journalism.
No, it's a structural feature of the market. If I write a highly nuanced, balanced, deeply researched article and you write a screaming, outrageous, bloody headline, you win the attention. You get the money. The market incentives force everyone to go lower just to survive. We see this on Twitter every day. Outrage travels faster than truth. That principle wasn't invented by an algorithm. It was discovered in 1835.
Which brings us to phase 3, outcomes. We've built the massive machine. We've greased its gears with psychological triggers. Now, what does this actually do to the product, to the content itself, and to us?
To understand the outcome, you have to look at how it's measured. Because if you want to sell something, you have to weigh it. You can weigh wheat, you can weigh pork bellies. But how do you weigh human attention?
Enter Arthur Nielsen.
Nielsen was a market researcher who created this literal physical device called the black box, which later became known as the people meter. It was a piece of hardware installed in sample homes that mechanically recorded exactly what the TV or radio was tuned to at any given second.
Because before this, advertisers were just wildly guessing, right? They relied on fan letters.
It was all anecdotal. We think people like this variety show because we get mail. But Nielsen made attention legible to the market. He created the master metric, gross rating points, or GRP.
Can we break down GRP for a second? It sounds like boring accounting, but it's actually the hidden currency of our entire culture.
Think of GRP as the exact price per head. Nielsen didn't just count raw numbers of viewers. He calculated the percentage of the total possible audience that was watching. If you had a high GRP, you could charge an absolute premium for ads. If you dropped below a certain number, your show didn't just get moved to a bad time slot, it was immediately canceled.
And here's the crucial system's insight. Once you can accurately measure something, you optimize for it.
Precisely. It completely killed sustained content. If a show had a slow, thoughtful part, maybe a long, quiet dialogue scene between two characters, Nielsen's box could see that thousands of people tuned out during that exact minute. The rating dropped, so network producers said no more slow parts. Shows had to become faster, punchier, constantly stimulating. It officially commoditized human consciousness into inventory.
And that massive amount of inventory needed a warehouse. That warehouse was the television.
The unity machine, the colonization of the American home, was total. But there was a specific innovation in television that permanently changed the rhythm of our daily lives, the magazine format.
This was Pat Weaver at NBC.
Right. Before Weaver, a single corporate advertiser would sponsor a whole show. The Texaco Star Theater. Texaco owned the entire hour. They baked their brand into the comedy. But Weaver said, no, we, the network, should control the content, and we will sell short spots to multiple different advertisers.
He invented the modern commercial break.
He invented the commercial break. And this deeply fragmented the viewer's psychological experience. You are now being aggressively interrupted every few minutes. And because the network controls the schedule, they can optimize those interruptions to be exactly as frequent as the audience will tolerate without turning off the set.
It literally turned the viewer into a product that is sliced up and sold in 30-second chunks to soap companies and car manufacturers.
And the cost of that attention went up. It became a massively high-stakes billion-dollar game.
But the colonization didn't stop in the living room. It moved from the couch to the office desk. It moved to the third screen, the personal computer.
This starts with a guy named Stephen Lukasik at DARPA in the 1970s. He was a physicist, a brilliant guy, but he holds the rather dark honor of being the world's first email addict.
He carried around this 30-pound portable terminal, this massive, clunky piece of equipment, just so he could check his digital messages anywhere he could find a physical phone line.
He was patient zero for the check-in habit, that weird mental itch. Is there a message for me? Did someone reply to my thought?
And then AOL industrialized that itch. You've got mail.
AOL was brilliant at this. They completely gamified the check-in, that cheerful voice, the little yellow mailbox flag going up. They designed the user interface specifically to encourage you to constantly loop back to the home screen.
This broke the sanctuary of deep work. Before you did your work, maybe you took a phone call if the phone physically rang. Now the attention capture machine is sitting right on your desk, silently blinking at you all day.
It's the total colonization of the workspace. But it was honestly just a warm-up for what was coming. We are witnessing the birth of Homo distractus, a human being whose primary baseline state of being is continuous partial attention.
Which leads us perfectly into phase 4, persistence. Why can't we look away? Why is this specific habit so incredibly hard to break? I mean, I know I shouldn't check my phone during dinner, but I do it anyway. Why?
To understand this, we have to go back to the psychology lab. We have to talk about B.F. Skinner and his pigeons.
The famous Skinner box.
Operant conditioning. Skinner put a hungry pigeon in a small box with a little button. If the pigeon pecked the button and got a food pellet, every single time it pecked, the pigeon would peck when it was hungry, eat the food, and then just stop. It was predictable. It was boring.
But then he changed the rules. And this is the crucial part that explains modern technology.
He introduced what he called variable ratio reinforcement.
Variable ratio. What does that actually mean in practice?
It means randomness. It means the pigeon pecks the button and gets nothing. It pecks again, nothing. It pecks a third time, gets a small pellet. It pecks 10 more times, nothing. Then it pecks and gets a massive jackpot of food.
And the pigeon goes crazy.
The pigeon becomes completely obsessed. It pecks constantly, frantically, even when it isn't hungry, because it never knows exactly when the reward is coming. The uncertainty itself creates a massive dopamine spike in the brain that is far more addictive than the actual reward.
This is email. This is the Instagram feed. This is the TikTok algorithm.
Exactly. If every single email you got was deeply important, you'd check it, deal with it, and close the app. But most emails are junk, boring, no reward. But every once in a while, a love letter, a job offer, A really funny meme from a friend. That's the pellet.
So we keep pecking at the glass. We are literally the pigeons in the box.
We have turned our offices, our bedrooms, our cars into Skinner boxes. The device sitting in your pocket is a portable slot machine that we pull the lever on hundreds of times a day.
And that device, the smartphone, the fourth screen, represents the ultimate colonization.
It really started with the BlackBerry. Do you remember the physical keyboard on those things?
Little clicks.
They originally called it the strawberry keyboard because the tiny plastic keys look like the seeds on a strawberry. But the nickname that culturally stuck was the crackberry. It was initially just for elites, for Wall Street guys and executives, but then the iPhone and Android brought that constant connection to the masses.
Tim Wu uses a very specific, evocative metaphor for what the smartphone did to us. He calls it fracking for attention.
It's such a powerful image. Think about the oil industry. When the easy, accessible oil runs out, they have to pump high-pressure toxic fluid to fracture rocks deep underground just to get the last microscopic drops of oil out.
And the smartphone does that exact process to our time.
Before the smartphone, there were natural pockets of time that were completely unreachable by the attention merchants. Waiting in line at the grocery store, riding the bus, sitting on the toilet.
The in-between moments again. The exact ones the poster artists in Paris couldn't quite reach because you still had to walk past them.
But the smartphone allows the massive tech platforms to frack those tiny moments. They can extract financial value from every single idle second of your waking life. There are no more off times.
It is manifest destiny. The total uninterrupted conquest of the human day.
And the psychological consequences of this are profound. It's not just about being mildly distracted at dinner. It's about the fact that we are constantly being sold to, constantly monitored, constantly harvested for data.
And in this hyper-connected environment, a very strange thing happened. We didn't just remain the passive product. We started to actively join the business. Phase 5, interconnection. We become the merchants.
This is the era of the celebrity industrial complex and the rise of microfame.
It used to be that celebrity was incredibly distant. You had movie stars who were like Greek gods. They lived up on Olympus and Hollywood. You didn't know what they ate for breakfast, and you didn't expect to.
But then came the erosion of that distance. It really starts in 1973 with a PBS documentary series called An American Family, The Loud Family.
This was the first reality TV show, long before Survivor.
Cameras just followed a regular upper-middle-class family around their house, and they became famous not for having exceptional talent or for being heroic, but just for being observed. It broke the barrier. Then you fast forward and get Paris Hilton, the Kardashians, people famous purely for being
The
famous.
celebrification of the ordinary.
And then social media, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube democratized this entire process. Suddenly, every single person on Earth had a printing press. Everyone had a global broadcast tower in their pocket.
And the core metric of human value changed from talent or character to followers.
Followers are the new currency of status, and managing this personal brand requires an immense amount of labor.
Right, we see the Insta models posting these seemingly effortless, candid photos on the beach. But behind the scenes, it's literally hours of unpaid work. Lighting, makeup, taking 50 shots, editing, writing the perfect caption.
And then engaging, replying to comments, managing the community so the algorithm favors you. It's a full-time job.
We even have Finstagrams now, fake Instagrams, where teenagers post their real messy selves for a few close friends because their main account is too highly curated to risk being authentic. We literally have a public PR department and a private self.
That is the ultimate trap. We are now simultaneously both the product sold to advertisers by the tech platforms and the merchants selling ourselves to each other for likes and validation. We are doing the exhausting labor of the machine for free while it harvests us.
Okay, let's unpack this. We've traced the history. We see the massive invisible machine. It feels overwhelming. It feels like we're just batteries plugged into the matrix.
It is overwhelming, but this is where the systemic analysis is absolutely vital. We need to explicitly define the crisis in perception.
We mentioned Tim Cook earlier. In 2015, the CEO of Apple gave a speech that really crystallized this whole dynamic. He said, when an online service is free, you're not the customer. You're the product.
It's a famous line now, but we really need to go deeper into the structural layer. What is the crisis in perception here? What are we failing to see when we open our phones?
I think there are 4 main misperceptions we need to clearly call out.
Let's list them. First, misperception of the product. We look at Facebook or Google search or even network TV and we think, oh, this is a helpful service provided for me, or this is just entertainment.
But the reality is entirely different. They are incredibly complex extraction systems. They're specifically designed to harvest behavioral data and human time. The surface is just the bait. It's the cheese in the mousetrap.
Second, misperception of the self. We think of ourselves as users or customers of these platforms.
But structurally, we are the inventory. Tim Wu uses the crop metaphor, which is so chilling. We are the wheat field. The algorithm is the combine harvester.
Third, misperception of agency. This is a huge one. We constantly blame ourselves. We say, I have absolutely no willpower. I'm so lazy for scrolling on my phone for 2 straight hours in bed.
But the reality is, you are bringing a pocket knife to a thermonuclear war. You are fighting against industrial-grade behavioral psychology, the legacy of John B. Watson and B.F. Skinner, combined with supercomputers that are running billions of simulations a second just to figure out exactly what shade of red on a notification badge will make you click.
It literally overrides your volition. It is explicitly designed to bypass your executive function and hit that reptilian core we talked about.
And fourth, misperception of value. We look at all these apps and think, wow, free access to all this information is a great deal.
But the cost is just hidden. It is paid in your privacy, it is paid in your autonomy, and it is paid in your fundamental ability to sit still and think deeply. The grand bargain is that we traded our conscious focus for momentary convenience.
So, structurally speaking, where does this system leave us?
The system is structurally mandated to grow. It requires infinite growth. It must constantly colonize new, quiet spaces to survive. First it was the public street, then it was the private home, then the office, then the pocket. Now it's the smartwatch on your wrist, the augmented reality glasses on your face.
And it requires intensity. That race to the bottom we talked about with the penny press. It has to constantly get louder and more sensational just to cut through the massive noise it already created.
But it is also incredibly fragile. It relies entirely on our enchantment. It relies on us not seeing the strings. When you finally realize that the reason you are so incredibly angry at a news story is because a machine learning algorithm mathematically calculated that anger would keep you on the site for 3 more minutes. The magic fades, the disenchantment effect kicks in.
So what do we actually do with this clarity? How do we push back against a system this vast?
Tim Wu suggests something he calls a human reclamation project.
Like an environmental conservation movement.
Exactly like that. Just as we realized in the 20th century that we couldn't just strip mine every beautiful mountain and dump chemicals into every river, we reclaimed physical land for national parks. We created strict zoning laws. You can't legally build a toxic chemical plant in the middle of a residential neighborhood.
So we need to legally and culturally reclaim human consciousness.
We need zoning laws for the mind. We need digital Sabbaths. We need aggressively add free spaces. Schools should be absolute sanctuaries for thought, not captive marketplaces for fast food companies. The ultimate act of human will in the 21st century is defining the borders where the market simply cannot go.
That is a profoundly powerful thought, that we actually have the right to look at this machine and say, not here.
It's really the only way to save the deep, quiet part of ourselves.
Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly.
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer link in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.